you're just joining us again, this is the first Forbes Middle East Sustainable Innovation Summit 2021. You will find on your tables a couple of codes. Two of them. One of them is for all of our social media channels, so you can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, and follow the latest news in your industries. And the second one is where you can connect with your fellow leaders and colleagues and submit your questions, and most importantly, take part in our polls, which we will be presenting. So welcome back to the second half of the day to Forbes Middle East First Sustainable Innovation Summit 2021. I'd like to introduce our speakers for this panel, where we'll be discussing technology-driven sustainable business practices. Our first speaker is Jean-Paul Scheuer, the MCO lead and general manager for Sanofi Genzyme at Sanofi Greater Gulf. Welcome, Jean-Paul. Rob Beswick is the managing director of Virgin Mobile UAE, MENA region, and Christopher Cook is the area managing director, Oman, UAE, and Qatar at Maersk. You guys have been in the headline lately in the news. So let me start with Jean-Paul first. The future of our planet, and you've said this a lot, will be shaped by our design and our engineering capabilities. We have the potential to accelerate this shift that we are witnessing away from a consumption-based paradigm to more of a knowledge-based, sustainable service economy. The importance of healthcare sector has never been more highlighted than in our times today with this pandemic, and it is not without its inherent, obviously, continuing challenges, even though we may be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So with digitization of care and patients getting more involved in the management of health, before we speak about sustainable innovation, can you please talk to us a bit about the challenges that the industry is currently facing?
Well, thank you, Jessie. Obviously, when we talk about challenges, the first one which would come to my mind, which is common to all industries, is to innovate. And innovation is really at the heart of any industry, and in particular pharma. However, in pharmaceuticals, and I don't know any other industry where this is the case, actually, we are investing hundreds of millions of euros in a project development, in research, without knowing if the product's going to be on the market later. So it takes today between 10 and 20 years to develop a new product. An innovation, it takes probably out of 100 programs ongoing, actually only 2 or 3 will make it to the end and till becoming a new treatment for patients. And that's obviously, one of the very key challenges we have. Generally, the industry is investing on average 20% of its sales, of its turnover in research and development, which is obviously as well one of the highest industry and you could compare it to space. But 20 to 25% is obviously a company like Sanofi is investing around 6 billion euros each year, to develop and research new treatments. And one of the big challenges is that today to develop a treatment is not enough. Patients and the community is expecting more, actually, they're expecting for solutions. So you cannot only arrive with a treatment, you need to arrive with a solution, which is going to go much beyond the treatment, but which can be including some services, for example, or some different tools to support the patient in a better managing his disease, actually. Another challenge is access. We see a lot of constraint in terms of budget, and this is becoming even more acute with in the past 1 year and a half. And here as well, actually, the pharma industry needs to be creative to really adapt to a new situation where access to innovation becomes very difficult because the pricing of innovation is high when health authorities do not have anymore the same flexibility in terms of budget to reimburse and cover this cost. And that becomes an enormous challenge and requires from the industry to adapt, developing access programs, be more innovative in the way actually we are discussing with the authorities as well. And that's obviously, one of the most critical challenges to make sure that we don't only innovate, but that this innovation is going to reach the patients.
I think you're being very mild about it, because if we add the time pressure you are under, your industry was under the spotlight at the start of COVID, and everyone looked at pharmaceutical companies saying, okay, where is it? Where's the solution? Give us the vaccine.
Well, basically now everyone is expecting a pharma to develop a new product for, in a year actually, and when it is more than a year, people are starting to get to get angry. I mean, we have to understand that most of the vaccines which have been brought to the market, I mean, have been already started to be researched actually on similar disease, I mean, years before. So it's not just a one-year development to get a vaccine on the market. It takes time, and that's the same for innovation. Basically, I was saying it takes 10 to 15 years actually to bring a new product to a market.
Yes, and obviously we've seen all of these challenges develop in the past few months. Grace, a lot of what you do is crucial when it comes to managing complicated projects and delivering them. So how are both, maybe project management and engineering as disciplines, helping towards making the world a more sustainable one?
Thank you. First, you're asking about two disciplines which are close to my heart. Being an engineer by education and a long-term practitioner, if I want to be biased, I would say the humanity without those two disciplines wouldn't be able to achieve what has achieved so far. And even more, we cannot aspire to get a better future. And I think Expo is a great example of how engineering and project management can pair together to produce such perfection. For a non-biased answer, I would say projects drive change. And the whole world is increasingly organized around projects. Hence, they form a key part of how sustainability can be achieved. When we talk about projects, we speak about outcomes. Tracking project outcomes itself has evolved from time, scope, and cost back in the 1960s to profit, people, and planet in the 90s. And in the 21st century and beyond, it's now purpose, people, and planet. What does it mean? It means that while tracking cost and investments, from a project lifecycle perspective, we need to make sure that there are alignment with the environmental benchmarks like LEED and BREEAM. So not only that, what it means is to become more holistic in mapping the impact of our projects on society and the environment. What does it mean to build a highway or a railway system or an entertainment resort by the beach? What does it mean? Is it healthy? Is there any energy, especially now when we're working and living at the same time? We need building which provide us with a healthy space and energy. So saying that, I would think that undertaking large-scale engineering programs is one of the most difficult and risky undertakings. When government and organization can attempt, if they do them well, it's very rewarding. So they can produce, they generate solution, system, capabilities, and whatever outcomes which are sustainable and innovative. At the same time, they produce tremendous benefit to the society. Things, as I mentioned, like smart hybrid, or a trip to the moon, or green energy sources, etc. But on the other hand, those engineering programs, they present great challenges. So now studies and practices are leaning towards integrating between engineering and program management towards excellence and more sustainable outcomes. And a joint study by PMI and the International Council of Engineering and PMI has identified 43 lean enablers. It's called lean enablers for managing engineering programs, effectively to integrate between those disciplines and to help overcome challenges like unclear roles and responsibilities or lack of risk management and so on. So just as a brief, when engineering and program management are well done and integrated, they can create a better future.
It's clear, I can see your passion for both of these industries.
I still have it after this long
yes,
time.
I can see it, and I could expect all of these terminologies to come out in your answers. Structure, goals, systems. I could see that, and it's wonderful to get that passion again on our stage. I'm going to go to you, Rob. Virgin Mobile UAE has pledged to eliminate its operational carbon footprint by the end of 2021, which is like tomorrow. How are you doing on that? And what series of policies and practices have you recently rolled out to offset carbon emissions?
No, thank you very much, Jessie. I'll start with what Grace said there, which is quite inspirational. So Virgin globally as a brand, Virgin Mobile as a brand, has always put purpose at the forefront of its brand strategy and how it builds businesses. And in fact, Virgin Mobile has used purpose effectively here in the UAE to help build out the value proposition. So the product, the people experience, how we build environments for our people, the policies that we adopt for our people. And the next logical step was looking at wider community and planet. So we could clearly see that the customer groups that we were talking to, that were resonating with our product, really wanted to see sustainability integrated into the businesses and the brands that they work with. So actually, we embarked on a journey. We brought in a company, a Dubai Centre Carbon for Excellence, and we asked that company to look across the whole of our business and look at the areas where emissions were produced, so the data centres, the network, the commutes that our people made from work, the to and from work, the exhaust fumes from the delivery drivers that deliver the SIM to our customers in under an hour, and come back and give us insight into how we could move forward and offset that carbon emissions. So we took a view that the first thing we should do is offset the operational emissions that the business create. So we went out and using Dubai Carbon of Excellence, we identified 3 projects, 1 globally and 2 locally, that we could invest in, that we could use then as a springboard to go out and say, hey, community, UAE, globally, we're now carbon negative. And in fact, we've achieved that goal.
Can you tell us which projects?
Yeah, of course. So the first, all 3 projects are linked and accredited by the United Nations, which we felt was really important. It's part of the overall global goals initiatives. The first project is a global initiative, which is planting trees, and it's actually planting trees in the UK. The second project is a project in the UAE, which turns landfill gas emissions into green energy. I think that's based out in Al Quaisi, so very, very local to the UAE. And the third is a project with DUA, which is looking at solar energy and the use of solar energy and how that can be improved. And we felt it was really important that not only did we look at overall carbon emission offsetting, and I think from a consumer perspective, the planting of trees is quite understandable. It's something that consumers can see, but also that there were local community initiatives that we invested in as well, which would obviously feed then through into the overall agenda of making the UAE net zero by 2050. So,
right, forgive me for interrupting, not to rain on your parade. These are all positive projects.
Yep.
But just this week, actually this morning, I had heard the statement, morbid statement from the United Nations, saying that all of the promises for carbon emissions are so weak, are so small compared to what's happening now, that in order to meet the goal and to avoid a 2 degrees rise in temperature by the end, within the next 10 years, the industry, the globe, has to basically multiply its efforts by 7 times in 8 years, which I thought was, I don't know if that's possible at all.
That's a very big question, and not one which I can answer.
But I will come back to you on maybe the big picture.
Yep.
But allow me to please go to Christopher. You're in shipping, in logistics. When it comes to reducing carbon emissions, that's really a huge challenge for you. What is your perspective on this, and how are you countering the challenges to fulfill the goal?
Thanks, Jessie, and it's a question that's very close to our path and our heart, decarbonizing logistics. As a business, we've made a commitment that we want to be net zero by 2050. We made that commitment 3 years ago in 2018, and at that point we said that we wanted to be operating vessels in 2030 that would be carbon neutral. And we recognize that we're a large emitter of CO2, and what we've been able to do in the last 3 years is advance that goal by 7 years. So we're actually going to put into our services vessels from 2023 that are carbon neutral. The first vessel in 23, and then 8 more in 2024. So we're already quite making good steps towards bringing in ships that will run on renewable fuels. Of course, the job isn't done, and I was talking to my fellow panelists, and we still need to find the fuel source to equip those vessels with the right energy. But that's something that we've found that as we collaborate, we can bring together business partners who will help us do that, and that's how we think we'll be able to make an impact in reducing our emissions, making bold commitments, and following those through, and then working together with industry partners, whether it's our customers, whether it's ship design or engine manufacturers, to bring those to life.
Thanks for that, Simon. From your research, we want to maybe zoom in a little bit on the consumer in the Middle East. And I hear this a lot from leaders in this region, that sustainability should start at home. It does start at home, but it's taking a long time to change the perspective and the mindsets. Give us your perspective on the consumer here in this region. Are they taking part in sustainability efforts? What more can be done to drive a positive impact in the decarbonization drive?
Yeah.
Just be honest, don't worry, we're all friends here.
I would say the short answer is they want to, right? And I would think that Rob will be successful in his endeavors, right? Because we recently surveyed around 6,000 consumers across the GCC and asked them all sorts of different questions about sustainability. What was their beliefs about it? What were their habits? What are people's perceived barriers, etc.? And what we found was that there was quite a high understanding about climate change, actually. And a lot of people feared, and rightfully so, that it would have an impact on themselves or their kids in the future. I think the number was 63% of the consumers that we surveyed across the GCC feared that it would have an impact on their kids, right? And I would say with that backdrop, we also saw that the vast majority actually wanted to incorporate sustainable behaviors in the day-to-day life, right? And that spanned from saving energy at home, right? Turning off the light, or installing more energy efficient appliances, buying electric vehicles. So the full gamut of different types of behaviors that one could take. Unfortunately, what we also saw was that it's only around 10 to 30%, depending on the type, of behaviors where people actually do take action, right? So there's a lot of people who want to take action, but not that many people do take action. And we asked them, therefore, what were the perceived barriers? Why were they kept back from actually taking this action? And in a general sense, the most often answered, or the most frequent answer was that consumers didn't see that they had the option, right? So across the different types of behaviors, more often than not, they didn't see that there was an opportunity to take a sustainable choice, right? Of course, there's a perception, right? So you can argue that sometimes there might be.
It's very
options.
interesting. I wouldn't think that was the answer. Because, yeah, it's interesting. It's a different perspective. But yeah, you're the one who's doing the research, so I take your word for it. Jean-Paul, I'm going to go back to you. Again, you champion sustainable innovation, but it also requires a lot of coordination between public and private sectors. How is Sanofi working with both partners, public and private, to foster this innovation in a sustainable industry?
In the continuity of what I was saying before, actually, and all the healthcare, ecosystem actually, needs to really involve all the actors, because again, the final objective, which we have all in common, is really to bring solution to all, and I insist on the all, actually, people who really need it. I think the COVID-19 crisis has highlighted some of the weaknesses we had in working together and making sure that we would be going towards the same direction. Well, this kind of partnership can take different frame. It could be a CSR partnership, and Sanofi, for example, here in the UAE has engaged in an education program of kids. We have been reaching 60,000 kids, actually, to highlight, the good way of eating, the good way of exercising, as a prevention campaign against diabetes. and we know that this disease has a very significant prevalence in the region. We've been working on affordability programs, actually. I mean, I was talking about the difficulty to access, and here, I mean, there is a mix of humanitarian programs that we've been implementing to treat patients with rare disease, because rare disease treatments are very costly, and not all patients, I mean, can get, I mean, the required insurance to afford these treatments, or to support actually some patients with multiple sclerosis, or I mean, to get access to these vital treatments. Not later than last Sunday, we've signed an agreement with the G42 to work on data management, on clinical research, again around rare disease. So that's a different kind of partnership. Either you do it with the Health Authority, Ministry of Health, either you do it with private, like we did with the G42 and with other partnerships we could link. But at the end of the day, I mean, yes, all actors in healthcare has to work together in the same ecosystem if we really want to be effective. And I think, again, COVID-19 crisis has really helped us to understand this very deeply and to correct some of the weaknesses we had. It's not yet perfect, but at least today I have the feeling that we are working and coordinating each other much better than we have ever done.
Right. I'm going to go back to Grace. I know you've touched on some of these points, but give us maybe a little bit more detail on how is project management as a profession, and specifically the PMI, helping and accelerate the shift away from this heavily consumption-based paradigm into a knowledge-based service economy.
I like the word heavily. Yes.
Extreme, yes.
As the world evolves, if we just look on what's going on, and actually the knowledge-based economy has been one of the main themes of the World Economic Forum and even the World Government Summit that this region hosts. We witnessed that individual, organization, association, and economies are shifting away from consumption-based, and they are rethinking the way they do business, and they are more reimagining more and more a more future and sustainable world. So they are in a race, like sort of in a race to solve big challenges.
The key word you used, Grace, is they're imagining. Are they executing yet?
Yeah, that's another side of the story. We need another panel there. So I think the whole world is trying to turn ideas into reality, and there is a transformation everywhere. So the role of the project manager, going back to your question around the evolving role of a project manager or the project management institute. So the project manager role has to evolve. And I mentioned we cannot have project managers who focus only on time, cost, and budget, despite the fact those are very important aspects. They need to accommodate the project economy, in which knowledge is at the heart of its technological advancement and sustainable innovation. So we believe that new mindset, new skill set, and new capabilities are needed with a very high business acumen, in addition to the technical knowledge. And the business and strategic acumen is at the heart of the skill set that PMI is trying to promote. So that said, we also believe that project managers have a decisive role in affecting the positive change and driving transformation. It's not of surprise that one of the McKinsey research has ranked project management as one of the top skills of the future. So at PMI, what we're doing is we are continuously evolving our standards, the standards of our qualifications, and we are offering specialized and industry-based offering. We have accelerated new topics. We're touching on agile, on transformation, and recently on construction, so that we can equip the project managers with the knowledge and open mindset so they can implement new and very much effective agile and hybrid approaches. And we believe that this will help them tackle more complex environmental projects and problems, and therefore they can more and more contribute to a circular project economy. So not only that, we are working closely with the organization like the one are led by the gentleman sitting next to me. So we're working closely with organizations so that we can integrate lifelong learning and knowledge-based practice update into our education program and vice versa. So we believe that all of which would help shift away from a consumption-based mindset into a more knowledge-based project economy.
Thank you for that. I see Rob shaking or nodding his head in agreement to what you're saying. So let me ask you if you have more initiatives you'd like to share with us when it comes to sustainable practices before we move on to your centric or focus on the consumer.
Yeah, no problem. So I was just thinking about your question from before. You posed a huge question about how sustainability initiatives can be accelerated. I think there's living proof already on this panel of people and of businesses that are putting sustainability first and integrating it not only into future practices for the future, understanding it from a consumer perspective and helping other businesses bring it to light, transforming shipping or pharmaceuticals. And I think that's the point. Brands need to take a stand, and brands need to make a point of bringing it forward to the consumer, and they need to do it now. And I think that everyone has a moral, ethical, and professional responsibility to drive a sustainable agenda. And I think that's got to be the key. And hopefully in whatever small way brands do that, or large ways that brands do that, in fact, it becomes a force multiplier for competitors or for others to take action and drives forward, and you get a snowball effect. And I think this is the point. This is the answer to your question. It's a catalyst. Simon, you were mentioning that consumers, through your research, wanted to take sustainable stands, but weren't aware of brands or brands or how they could do that. And therein lies the problem. Brands need to, and businesses need to make it easier for customers to make sustainable choices. And that's what we want to do at Virgin Mobile, however small that impact may be. We want to enable customers through our app to be able to offset their carbon emissions. And this is the next thing that we're launching in the coming weeks. And our commitment to the consumer will be, look, you make a choice. You use our product. If you want to offset your emissions, go ahead and do that. It's a small payment, 6 dirhams a year, but we will match that contribution as a business. So Virgin Mobile will match that contribution as a business, and we will then use that money and invest that money into initiatives that can improve the planet.
If I go back to Maersk, Maersk has been involved in supporting some startups in the region, and Forbes has interviewed one of those transportation startups from Egypt that Maersk has invested in. How are you sort of, if the term applies, reinventing yourself as a shipping and logistics giant in this industry? And how would this approach supporting startups fit into your strategy, your sustainability strategy?
So I mentioned that we've made these investments in new ships which will run on this dual fuel technology. And at the current time, there is not sufficient supply of that fuel to support all of our ships. We've got more than 600 vessels in our fleet. So we need to look for innovation which can produce those new fuels. So what we've been investing in through our venture capital arm in Maersk is several different startups that have looked at either converting biomass into fuel or looking at the different fuel types. There's basically 4 different fuels that are being looked at the moment: ammonia, biodiesel, lignin, and e-ethanol, which is what we are spending our energies on at the moment. So we're looking at these companies to support us in developing technology which we can use to power our vessels. And then we're also investing in companies that are developing electric vehicles or autonomous vehicles for land-based transportation. As you mentioned, we've moved into being an end-to-end integrator, and the land-side emissions are as important to us as the ocean emissions. So this is another space where, through our venture capital arm, we're looking at investing in land-side entities to help us develop skill sets and knowledge base.
Right. Simon, from the last question, we had taken some information or insight on the consumer. I'd like to add to that. How do you think maybe we can manage waste and resource consumption. And can you explain this phenomenon to our audience today through some real-life examples?
Yes. So I think even though it's a buzzword, the circular economy is probably the best term to use as an answer to a question, right? And essentially the concept is about every step of the value chain to reduce waste or reuse waste products, right? That's essentially it, reduce consumption and reduce waste. An interesting example is batteries, right? So batteries, the ones that we have in flashlights, the lead acid batteries, the recycle rates of those are around 90% globally, right? So very, very high. And why is that the case? It's the case because they're designed to make it easy to take apart and then reuse them in a manufacturing process. In the context of climate change, it's interesting to take that example to electric vehicle batteries, right? Because there will be a huge demand for raw materials for those types of batteries in the future, given that we need to shift essentially the entire vehicle base across the globe to meet those targets. Now, what can you do with those? A battery would last 10 to 20 years or so, and by the time that expires, it's not powerful enough to run a vehicle anymore. But with the increase of renewables in the power sector, there is a huge need for storage, essentially to get the power sector to work. So there's an opportunity to upcycle those, essentially, and use them and create a second life for them as stationary batteries that support the power sector. And towards the end of that life, you can then take the batteries and break them down again and use the raw materials to make new electric vehicle batteries. And in between, if you then also use the vehicles as a service as opposed to ownership, then you really have the full cycle and you reduce the amount of products that are needed in the first place. So that to me is quite a good example of how you can, throughout the value chain, reduce consumption and avoid majority of the waste.
Yes, those are some practical examples. If I can maybe, because I'm sort of kind of running out of time, get you, Jean-Paul, maybe the biggest drivers of innovation occurring right now from your perspective within the pharmaceutical sector, and how are approaches to innovation changing? How are they different now in light of this trend towards more disciplined innovation? Grace would appreciate that word.
I don't know, she will tell. No, you know, despite innovation being really at the center of the pharmaceutical company project, we are a very traditional industry, and changing the way we are working have not been really, on top of the priorities over the past 10, 20 years. And really this COVID-19 crisis actually has really been an accelerator pushing us really to change the way we've been working. At least internally, using more digital, for example. Some industry, would laugh looking at, at us. 10 years ago, still really being pioneering digital when it was already at the core of many industries' ways of other industries' ways of working. So for us, it's something which is rather new, even if we have been using it here and there. But we see actually the digitalization of healthcare is becoming something very much present today. To make it short, the second big evolution that we have today is seeing companies more and more either working together, and we saw it in the COVID-19 crisis. Actually, there was no competition, right? Companies have been cooperating, working together to face this pandemic. I'll give an example. Sanofi actually has been, while we were still developing our vaccine, manufacturing the vaccine of other companies, and we've been over the past months manufacturing more than 400 million doses of vaccines. From Pfizer, from Moderna, from Johnson, actually, really to increase the capacity of manufacturing of the vaccine, which was so much needed. We are also very much cooperating with other companies like biotech companies, and a lot of the new products coming on the market today, in particular from Sanofi, but not only, are issued from cooperation that we have with other biotechnology companies. So we see, more and more companies working together. In the pandemic phase, it has been even more acute, but even before, and it becomes even more present now, because the cost of research is huge. So when you pool the cost of research, when you work together, you can accelerate better financing the new products and the solutions that you bring. And that's really, I mean, today, it's not even tomorrow, it's really what today is happening. And it is very rare that an innovation is brought to the market, I mean, only by, only a sole company. It's always now, I mean, more or less really the outcome of a cooperation between one, two, or even more companies. So I think that this is really one of the major change, but it also, I mean, obliges us in parallel again to change our way, the way we work actually, and that's quite, I mean, specific to the pharma industry, I believe.
I know you're stressing the collaboration, and that was true. I don't know about there was no competition. There was a little competition. We have to say a little.
I didn't see it like this really. I mean, you always have competition. At the end of the day, if you talk about vaccine, no, because I mean there is such a need for vaccines that the more companies who could develop vaccines, the better at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think the competition was on the country levels.
You know, we still have less than 30% of the worldwide population which has been vaccinated. Here we talk about it because, I mean, it's in the region we have rate of 80%. But if you go to Africa or even some countries in Europe, you know, I mean, you take Romania, they are, again, I mean, starting a new curfew from this weekend because the vaccination, I mean, you have a lot of countries where vaccination rate is still low. Yeah. So, yes, I mean, I think there is a need. So when there is such a huge need, and I will finish on this, Jesse, I mean, I think the way the pharmaceutical industry have been reactive and reacting to this pandemic has really been exemplary, and I think it has really significantly improved the image we have, and this capacity we have been able to work together to mobilize our strengths to really try to bring a solution to this worldwide pandemic has really been exemplary.
No, and certainly the industry has, and you've come through, the industry has come through with solutions, so I don't think anybody would have minded the process as long as it had led to the result it did. Rob, briefly, because I wanted to focus with you, being a customer-first brand, as you describe yourself, and a customer-centric brand, how are you maybe setting an example for businesses by not only setting targets for overall emission reduction, but also setting or adopting new ways of working that include sustainability awareness and education, which is much needed?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's three levels of inspiration that we're looking at providing. One is close to home. We want to inspire our people. So we want to inspire the people and the employees that work within Virgin Mobile, and undoubtedly the road that we've embarked on with sustainability is doing just that. And I think that's brilliant. We were talking before about working for brands that you actually care for. And I think by taking a stand as leaders within our organization and creating the freedom for our employees to go out and create the roadmap for sustainability for the future is empowering. So that's the first thing. I think it's great if one of our people can go home and talk to their family over dinner and say, hey, you know what, we're making a difference. That's amazing. The second is other businesses. So I think if we can inspire in whatever small way other businesses to leave this room at the end of the day and go back to their businesses and go, you know what, if they can do it, why can't we? There is a way of doing this. I think that would be amazing. And then I think the third is, of course, our consumers, and it's our consumers that ultimately, you know, drive us as a sustainable business. And if we can use sustainability and create a roadmap and integrate sustainability into our value proposition, into our operating model and how we do business, I think we can then use that to inspire and engage consumers, and they can help to carry that torch forward in their lives as well.
Right, we have just a couple minutes left. I will turn to the audience and see if there's maybe a question or two quickly that we can take within 5 minutes. If not, I will end with you. Grace, if you have any questions, do raise your hands. We'll get a microphone over to you. I don't see, the light is too bright. I can't see any, but okay. If there's no questions, I will end the panel with you, Grace, maybe on a final note. And this is specific. I have to wear my glasses again. I'm telling you, the eyesight with the virtual mode of working this last year has some done some damage to my eyesight. As the PMI Managing Director in this region, how is PMI supporting technology-driven sustainable business practices and projects within our region?
It has been for a while in our radar to work closely with organizations and associations. So we are strengthening and leveraging the partnership we have with big organization, association, industry association, and leaders in sustainability and innovation to bring into the market success story, showcases, practices, and model. So PMI is positioned as a thought leader, as a platform in which synergies are created between organizations around the world, again, towards excellence, benchmark, and also, as mentioned by Bob, that if they can do it, why not? Can't we do it?
So back to competition.
Exactly. We need, I think, what success looks like is important. And you can see this region is really competing on taking it to an excellence. So in addition to standards and practices, we need always to start from where others have started in terms of success. So I think that's the primary role PMI is trying to do. For example, I would like to mention, like, PMI has recently developed a first vertical specific offering in the construction industry. We have done a research jointly with world-leading players and the partners in the construction industries and subject matter experts such as Saudi Aramco and others to identify the pain points and address some of the challenges. And we noticed that there are lots of pain points where still the construction industry still underperforms. So these include poor communication, poor transparency, unclear roles and responsibilities, scope creep, management of technology and innovation. So all of these are causing, just for example, construction, tremendous schedule and cost overrun. So just this is an example on how PMI can help with some business and industry practices. So we believe that we are in a unique position to advance the profession, construction, and the built environment. So I can stop here.
Well, not to be biased, Grace, but with leaders like you, I have no doubt at all that they are on the right track with project management. I'd like to thank our experts for this very deep insight into this industry. I'd like to invite you as well to please take this time to commemorate our panel and our event in a lovely photo. I will invite our photographers as well to let you know where you can stand as I introduce our next topic. Thank you so much.